The man in the reflection. Lena had always considered herself a practical woman. She didn't believe in ghosts, omens, or bad luck. Living alone in her small apartment for the past 3 years, she had learned to ignore the occasional creaks of the old building, the rustling of the wind against the window, and even the distant sounds of sirens that echoed through the streets at night. But something had changed. It started as a feeling, an unshakable sense that she was being watched. It wasn't paranoia, at least not at first. Just small, almost imperceptible things. A stranger standing too close behind her at the grocery store. The way footsteps seemed to mirror hers when she walked home at night. The sensation of eyes lingering on her even when the street was empty. She told herself it was nothing. Until the notes started appearing. The first one came on a chilly Thursday evening. She had just come home from work, exhausted, barely registering the envelope slid under her door. It was plain white, no name, no markings. She opened it, her fingers trembling slightly. "You have the most beautiful way of brushing your hair." Her heart pounded. There was no signature. No explanation. Just those words, written in a neat, elegant script. She swallowed hard, scanning the room as if expecting someone to jump out from the shadows. But she was alone. Maybe it was a mistake. A joke. A weird neighbor. She tossed the note in the trash and tried to forget about it. 2 days later, another note appeared. "I love how you read by the window. You look so peaceful." Lena felt a cold sweat break out on her skin. She had been sitting by the window last night, curled up with a book, unaware that anyone was watching. That night, she moved her reading chair to the other side of the room. By the time the third note arrived, "Red is your color. Wear it again." Lena wasn't just scared. She was terrified. She had worn a red sweater the day before. This was deliberate. Someone was watching her, studying her. She kept her curtains shut after that. A week passed. No more notes. No strange noises. Maybe whoever had been watching her had lost interest. Then one night as she was brushing her teeth, she saw him. Her bathroom mirror reflected the small window above the sink, the one that faced the alleyway behind her building. Normally it showed nothing but darkness. But tonight there was a face. A man's face. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment she thought it was a trick of the light. But then he moved just slightly, just enough for her to see the gleam of his eyes in the dim streetlight. She spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs. The window was closed. Locked. But she had seen him. And he had seen her too. She barely slept that night. The next morning she called the police. A young officer arrived, polite but indifferent. He looked around, found nothing suspicious, and left after suggesting she install cameras. So she did. She bought a security camera online and placed it near the window, aimed at the alley. She checked it obsessively. For 3 nights, nothing. The footage was clear. Then, on the 4th night at exactly 2:43 a.m., she saw him. The man was standing just outside the glow of the street lamp. He wasn't moving. He wasn't even blinking. Just watching. Lena's stomach twisted into knots. She rewound the footage over and over, hoping she had imagined it. But there he was. He stood there for 4 hours. Then just before dawn he turned and walked away. Lena was done. She packed a bag and booked a hotel. Tomorrow she would break her lease, leave everything behind and never look back. That night she sat on her couch, waiting for morning. She kept every light on. She checked the camera every few minutes, but the alley remained empty. Until 3:12 a.m. Her phone buzzed. Motion detected. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She fumbled for her phone, opened the security app with shaking hands and watched the live feed. The man wasn't in the alley anymore. He was inside her apartment. Standing in the middle of her living room. Right behind her. She barely had time to scream before the screen went black. The man under the bed. Rachel had always been independent. At 26, she was living alone for the first time in a small but cozy one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Seattle. It wasn't the safest neighborhood, but she liked her space. She worked late shifts at a local diner, often walking home alone in the dark. It never bothered her until the night she noticed the missing key. Rachel had a habit of keeping her spare key under the doormat. It wasn't the safest hiding place, but she figured no one really paid attention to things like that. One night, after an exhausting shift, she dragged herself up the stairs to her apartment, ready to collapse into bed. She bent down as always to retrieve the key. But it wasn't there. Her stomach clenched. She checked again, feeling around with her fingers. The key was gone. For a moment, she told herself she must have forgotten to put it back that morning. Maybe she had left it inside. She hurriedly unlocked the door with her regular key and stepped in. Everything looked normal. Still, an uneasy feeling settled in her chest. Rachel checked the windows. Locked. Checked the closet. Empty. She took a deep breath. She was just being paranoid. Maybe a neighbor had spotted the key and taken it as a prank. She would get the lock changed tomorrow. She locked the door behind her, double-checked it, and went to bed. The next morning, Rachel stopped by the hardware store and bought a new lock. She felt better after changing it. For a few days, nothing strange happened. Then one night, as she was about to leave for work, she saw it. A new key. Sitting neatly under her doormat. Rachel froze. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. It looked exactly like her old key. Same shape, same grooves. But she knew it wasn't hers. Because she had thrown the old one away. She quickly unlocked her door, stepped inside, and slammed it shut, heart racing. Someone had copied her key. Rachel didn't sleep well after that. She started hearing noises at night, soft creaks, faint rustling sounds. At first, she convinced herself it was the old pipes or the wind outside. But deep down she knew better. One night, she woke up suddenly. It was 3:14 a.m. Her apartment was silent. Too silent. Then she heard it. A soft, barely audible breath. Not hers. She lay completely still, her heart pounding. It was coming from somewhere inside the room. Slowly, carefully, she turned her head toward her closet. The door was slightly ajar. Had it always been like that? Rachel reached for her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, landing on the open gap of the closet. Empty. A shaky exhale left her lips. She was being paranoid. Lack of sleep. Stress. That was all. She shut the closet door, locked it, and crawled back under the covers. Then she heard it again. A breath. But this time it was coming from under her bed. Rachel's entire body went rigid. A cold wave of terror crashed over her. She gripped her phone, resisting every instinct to bolt. She had two choices, run or look. Her fingers trembled as she hovered her phone over the edge of the bed, lowering it just enough to angle the flashlight beneath. The light revealed a figure. A man. Crammed into the narrow space beneath her bed, lying on his side, his face inches from hers. His eyes were wide open, and he was smiling. Rachel let out a strangled scream and leapt off the bed, bolting for the door. She fumbled with the lock, hands shaking violently. Behind her, she heard movement, the sound of someone sliding out from under the bed. She barely managed to rip the door open and sprint into the hallway, pounding on her neighbor's door. The police arrived within minutes, but by the time they entered Rachel's apartment, the man was gone. There was no sign of forced entry. No fingerprints. But under the bed they found something chilling. A knife. And worse, a notebook. Inside were pages filled with notes about Rachel's daily routine. What time she left for work. When she came home. What she wore. And the most disturbing entry of all, written the night before. She didn't check under the bed. Tomorrow I'll say hello. The Watcher in the Dark. Lauren had always loved running at night. It was the only time the world felt truly quiet, just her, the rhythm of her breath, and the empty suburban streets. She had been jogging the same route for years, passing the same dimly lit houses, the same flickering street lamp on Carter Avenue, the same old convenience store with its humming neon sign. It had always been peaceful. Until she noticed the man. It was late September when she saw him for the first time. She had just turned down Maplewood Street when something in the distance caught her eye. A figure. A man standing under a street lamp. So motionless. Lauren slowed slightly, her instincts on high alert. He wasn't walking. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was just standing there. Her first thought was that maybe he was waiting for a ride. Maybe he was lost. But as she jogged past him, she realized something unsettling. He wasn't facing the street. He was facing her. His head was tilted ever so slightly, eyes locked onto her movements. Lauren's heartbeat quickened, but she forced herself to stay calm. She kept running, resisting the urge to turn around. When she reached her apartment, she locked the door behind her and shook off the uneasy feeling. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe. A week passed. Then it happened again. Same route. Same time. And the same man. This time he was standing near the park entrance. Different location, same eerie stillness. Lauren's chest tightened. She picked up her pace, her skin prickling with unease. As she passed, she glanced at him quickly. No reaction. No movement. Just that same unblinking stare. She ran home faster than ever. Lauren debated changing her running route. Maybe even stopping for a while. But part of her refused to let fear control her. So she kept running. That was a mistake. One night, she stepped outside, stretching before her usual jog when she saw him. Not down the street. Not near the park. But directly across from her apartment. Standing on the sidewalk. Watching. Lauren's blood ran cold. He knew where she lived. For the first time she truly felt afraid. She rushed inside, locked the door, and yanked the curtains shut. Her breath came fast, uneven. Minutes passed. Then an hour. When she finally gathered the courage to peek through the blinds, he was gone. The next day she called the police. The officer took down the details but didn't seem too concerned. Has he threatened you? Tried to enter your apartment? No, Lauren admitted. The officer sighed. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do unless he commits a crime. Just stay alert, okay? That night, she double-checked her locks and made sure every window was secure. Then at 2:37 a.m. her phone rang. The screen flashed unknown caller. A shiver ran down her spine. She almost didn't answer. But something inside her needed to know. She pressed the phone to her ear. Hello? Silence. Then soft breathing. Lauren's stomach twisted. She hung up immediately. The phone rang again. Same number. She didn't pick up. She barely slept that night. Lauren stopped running at night. Days passed with no sign of the man. No phone calls. No eerie sightings. She started to believe it was over. Then one evening as she was getting ready for bed, she heard it. Footsteps. Right outside her door. She froze, her body going rigid. The sound was slow, deliberate. Someone standing just outside, shifting their weight from foot to foot. Her mind raced. Should she call the police? Stay silent? Then a knock. Soft. Almost playful. Lauren's breath hitched. She didn't move. Another knock. Then a whisper, barely audible through the door. I know you're awake. A chill ran down her spine. She grabbed her phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. The operator's voice was calm, steady. Stay on the line. Officers are on their way. Outside, the footsteps retreated. By the time the police arrived, the man was gone. The officers checked the area but found nothing. No footprints. No sign of forced entry. One of them sighed. If he comes back, call us immediately. Lauren barely slept that night. When morning came, she stepped outside cautiously. The street was quiet, empty. No sign of the man. Relief flooded her. Maybe he had finally given up. Then she saw it. A note tucked under her doormat. Her hands shook as she unfolded the paper. 4 words written in neat, deliberate handwriting. See you very soon. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you like this story.